Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon on India and the Leeds City region, building a special relationship. I'm Alex Turner, I'm the Joint Managing Director of thebusinessdesk.com, and I will be taking you through the next hour. We've got a great lineup of speakers with a range of different perspectives on the Indian-Yorkshire relationship, and we will be hearing from each of those in turn. It's a particularly timely moment to address this subject as the UK prepares to look beyond Europe in a more focused way. It's also timely because we follow on this morning from the Manchester India Partnerships event, which is probably the first and certainly last time that Andy Burnham will be my warm-up act. So we've got a lot to pack in the next hour as we delve into the work that's currently going on in terms of India and Leeds City region. And we hear from some of the important figures behind the activity that's going on. To start with, I'm delighted to welcome the Consul General of India, Dr. Vikram. Dr. Vikram, welcome.
Thank you, Alex.
For those of the audience who aren't perhaps familiar with the role of the Consul General or the role of the consulate in Birmingham, could you just briefly explain what it is that you do?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Our consulate in Birmingham basically is responsible for all political, commercial, cultural, consular and all kind of issues between India and UK in the region of Midland and north of England. So in all these areas, this is the main representative office of India. And it has been our constant endeavor to promote the close people-to-people ties, the trade and economic ties, as well as the cultural ties. Of course, I think we have a big diaspora also in the region, so which also serves as a strong bond between the two nations.
And the relationship between the UK and India, it obviously goes back centuries, but seems like it's got renewed momentum in recent years. Why do you think that is?
Yes, definitely. I think both UK and India, two leading democracies of the world. We are among the world's largest 7 economies. UK and India both feature. Today, if you see that with a combined GDP of around $5 trillion, which is there between two of the countries, there has been a robust growth in all aspects of this relationship. Whether you will see from the, as I was earlier also saying, whether it is the people-to-people contact, whether it is the relationship between the two governments at political level, and same goes for economic and commercial level, in spite of the issues which the world is facing today. But in all these aspects, we have seen a robust growth.
Yeah, and many people will be familiar with some of the changes that have taken place in India in recent years and the speed of change that's going on. How would you summarize how India is changing at the moment?
Well, I'm sorry, somebody just popped in. That is the problem of video conferences these days. Can you repeat your question a bit, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Just saying, many people will be familiar with some of the changes that have taken place in India in recent years.
Yes.
And but could you summarize for us how it's currently changing the country?
See, I would say that presently what you see in last 5-6 years now, India has a very, as you know, we are a very vibrant democracy. 5 and 6 years, I will say since 2014. The country has seen almost a new direction, we say a new India, because in all the spheres now we have been blessed with a very stable government since 2014, which has actually opened pathways in almost every sector, whether it is the trade, whether it's economy, whether it were internal reforms which were needed. Like, India today is one of the countries which has the largest cash transfer benefit scheme to the poor. It was one of the biggest steps which was taken. So goes for the world's largest health insurance scheme for the poor people. So, and similarly, when you will see in the infrastructure sector, so much of impetus have been given to develop a world-class infrastructure in India, so that if somebody wants to invest in India, there are already all the paraphernalia and all the substance is already there. You know, India today is one of the youngest countries in the world in terms of our young population. And similarly, so much investment has been done for skilling our youth so that they are ready to take up the challenges of the world. So, and these changes and all these efforts which have been put today are now quite visible. And that is why we say that it is a great time and a great opportunity for both the countries to strengthen the ties and take forward the relationship.
No, absolutely. And if we take it from the country scale to the scale of businesses, what are the opportunities for businesses in having a close relationship with India, and perhaps, you know, looking to trade directly or to set up in India?
See, I would say that one of the things is that there are so many sectors between India and UK today, which I have natural complementarities. Like, you know, recently we came out with our new education policy. You know, in education sector, UK is strong. There are so many big universities which are there, and they all are also looking for avenues to expand, to open campuses abroad, to impart training, to collaborate. Similarly, another, I think for the Midland region, another sector is automobiles, where there is a lot of opportunity for cooperation. IT always has been a sector on which we are strong and we are looking for things. I think there are many services for which, you know, the public delivery of those, where I think there is a lot of learning which is possible both ways. So that is also there. Finance is, of course, there. And especially, I would say that now with the new policies of the government of India, this is an special time for SMEs, you know, because all of us in our business interactions have seen that for large corporation, there is a different scale at which they operate. But now, you know, through so many initiatives of the government, there are ways that if you are an SME based out of this region and you would like to invest in India, or you would like to buy something from India, or you would like to collaborate with an Indian entity. So now this is a very good time to get into that.
And you mentioned the Midlands automotive industry. So the outstanding example is obviously the Tata ownership of Jaguar Land Rover over the last 10, 12 years. How important is it that there are those, you know, fantastic success stories for particularly the smaller businesses to look up to and take confidence from?
Yes, they are very important. And I think even this year, you know, the TVS Motor has done its investment here. And I think in the IT sector, Microland has done. And I see any such investment which comes even at these times, you know, when there is COVID in the world, when, you know, there are already, you know, when we know that Brexit is around the corner. But when you see these kind of investment and relationship building in this time period, it once again reassures you the mutual confidence which the markets and the people have in each other, which is, I think, something which comes naturally between India and UK. Because of the long relationship, there is a lot of, you know, you don't have to sell UK to an Indian person and in India to a UK person. You know, we both are very well aware about each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just to touch on Leeds City region itself, you know, how can the city region make the most of a close relationship with India?
Well, I think first of all, the city region needs to think that, you know, in its own sets of priorities and its own sense of strengths, which is where they think that they would be able to offer something which would be of interest in India. Alternatively, what are the things where they think that India could be a collaborator? So once the priorities are identified by the city region, there are many ways in which it could be approached, right from the business to business level, where, you know, putting two people together. If somebody in the region, you know, wants to invest in India and is looking for a partner in India, And if you think that, if you wish, then you can approach the consulate. We can find you people in India who would be interested in doing business. Similarly, for the city region, I will say it is always good to have delegations and all. And this time, the problem which we are facing is that because of 2020, most of the delegations are virtual. Having said that, I think it would be a good idea if, if under the city business authorities and business people, we can take a delegation to India, and we can have a meeting with the concerned sectors in virtually even this year. And maybe it can be followed with an actual meeting next year.
Yes, fingers crossed. Well, I know we'll hear later on from Roger Marsh, who can spearhead a lot of that activity in Leeds City region. So for the moment, Dr. Vikram, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your insights.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We touched a little bit on the politics of New India. So I'm pleased to welcome our second guest, Professor Roopinder Oberoi. The professor is the founder of the Centre for Innovation and Social Enterprise at the University of Delhi. She's also working on a 3-year research project at the University of Huddersfield. So Roopinder, with your specialism in political science and public policy, perhaps would you be able to expand on a couple of the points that Dr. Vikram was making around the New India and what the government is currently looking to achieve?
So hi, good afternoon. I think my views somewhat resonates with Consular Journal's Dr. Vikram's view, and he has in fact summed up and encapsulated the story of New India very well. I'll just add more points to what he has flagged already. And I think what he was touching upon, that we need to have this kind of more conversations between India and UK to allow this kind of deeper dwelling into the issues about enhancing the ties and establishing this healthier partnership and relationship between the two regions. But the fact is, there is already we are living in an exciting phase of this economic relationship with UK and India. And in fact, government is sort of very focused on enhancing this trade partnership. So in a way, we are talking about modern partnership, but we have this strong historical ties with UK. And as Dr. Vikram said, we are the 7th largest economy currently, aiming for 5 trillion economy by 2025. And our demographics is a big asset. We have an average age of 27 who are very skilled youth in India. The language is no longer a barrier. And India is also slated to be the 3rd largest economy by 2030, and with a very, very moderate inflation rate. And as Dr. Vikram pointed out, that despite the COVID hiccups and this kind of slowdown which India has suffered, IMF has said that we are going to grow at about 8.8% GDP by 2021, which is remarkable, and it actually is higher than that of China. So we're already seeing this, in the month of October, this green shoots in the Indian economy. October and November is a festival season. So in fact, I was reading the report today where it says that India is recovering faster than what some of the official projections were for this year. And India is also the second largest source of FDI for UK. So there are this remarkable linkages and bonds between UK, which are already there, and how we can reap it further is perhaps some of the things we need to look into. And one more point that I want to add here is that in last decade, UK invested about 25 billion in India, which represents about 8% of FDI into the country. To add to that, another interesting fact is that already the total number of people employed by British companies in India currently stand at about 788,000, representing about 5% of the private sector jobs. So these are remarkable points which makes India and UK relationship very, very attractive for the consumer point of view and also from the investment point of view.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes overlooked, isn't it, in that global picture, just the scale of UK-India trade already. But you mentioned China. Is it fair to say that India is positioning itself as an alternative to China?
There is this new program which was announced by Prime Minister during the COVID time. It's very, very interesting because he labeled it as, Atmanirbhar Bharat, which, if I translate it into English, means self-reliant India. But in fact, it doesn't mean protectionism. It was initially sort of misrepresented. It actually means, former global interface interaction where we are focusing on indigenous innovation, entrepreneurship, make in India, startup India, but we're trying to link it to the potential partners globally. So Atmanirbhar Bharat is kind of providing a show, or rather showcasing India as an alternative to China. But we know, we are realistic that it doesn't happen overnight. It requires, India to deal with some of the challenges, some of the hurdles, regulatory issues, the ease of doing business ranking, which has gone better, from 142 in the year 2016, we are ranked today as 63. So which is a remarkable jump, and we must acknowledge the efforts of the government to make this, business practices and legal hurdles, removing some of the legal hurdles and regulatory issues within there, which was a major issue, stopping this kind of inflow of investment in India. So I would say that we are happy to showcase the strengths of India, but to say that we can absolutely replace China would be, highly optimistic, at least for next few years. We have to do a lot of work, and policy, regulatory issues need to be tackled before we can, claim this thing globally.
Yeah, absolutely. But I suppose from a UK perspective, as we've touched on, there is that long-standing heritage and and those historic relationships between the two countries. Just to talk about your specialism as an academic, there's an awful lot of partnership work going on between universities in both countries. Can you tell us a little bit about perhaps the work that you're involved in and why universities are a great kind of starting point for that relationship?
I agree with you, Alex, completely. This is another area of potential, investment and collaboration to emerge, which is between the universities. And when I mean universities, also includes, the whole knowledge exchange program, which includes research centers, think tanks, and so on. And the benefit of engaging with and involving with variety of institutions and some of the central and important universities and like IITs and IIMs and Delhi University would be that you establish this formidable partnership and research institution, which can subsequently help in beneficial partnerships in research, developing of hubs and incubators. And there is already a program which is UK-India Research Initiative, which started in 2010, and wonderful and formidable associations and research partnership were forged during that time. And I was personally involved in this thing. So it sort of broke a lot of barriers and understanding of what the academia is doing and what are the thrust areas of academia and industry interfaces. And another excellent program which is initiated currently is about university corporate partnership, which aims to encourage this and proactively facilitate new mutually beneficial partnership between companies in India and the British universities for creating research centers. And they have been having this virtual interactions and bringing together Indian IT investors and UK and prestigious UK universities and Indian universities together in the emerging areas of AI, robotics, big data. So there's a lot of potentialities, untapped potentialities actually of engaging in this thick interaction between the academia, industry, civil society, think tanks, we can work on it a lot. I see a lot of possibilities. Even though we're doing good, I think we can do a lot more.
I think that's the really exciting thing, isn't it, Professor? That the timing. You mentioned some of those emerging technologies, and it feels like there's an awful lot of opportunity for businesses in the two countries to work together to really maximise the expertise and the markets that both countries have access to.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and there means as Dr. Vikram said, that there's already this kind of relationship which exists, but government of India has identified certain areas like digital technology, manufacturing, healthcare, infrastructure, education, rural development, and these are the priority areas which government is looking for partnerships and investment. And in fact, Invest in India or Startup India allows or welcomes UK investment as a part of Make in India initiative. So even though it is titled as Make in India initiative, Indian government is proactively asking and looking for UK investment in some of these programs called Startup India, Stand Up India, which helps in creating a lot of employment and fostering this culture of innovation. And there's this, and I also believe that there's already a critical mass of industry existing in India. We have remarkable companies like Vodafone, HSBC, BP, JCB India Limited, who already exist in India. So I see that, and one more point, just to add that when we talk about UK-India trade, we also need to remember there's a lot of soft power exchange which needs to take place in terms of literature, art, film, theater, music, besides goods and services. So this is another area which I think we can explore. Yes,
absolutely. I think that the cultural aspect of the relationship is worth an hour on its own. But unfortunately, that's all we've got time for at the moment. But thank you very much, Professor Oberoi, for your contribution this afternoon.
Thank you.
And as the Professor said, there's a critical mass of companies in India, and we would like to bring forward Andrew Walker, who's the director of Dr. Reddy's, which is an Indian-owned business with large operations in Yorkshire. Andrew, for the benefit of those people who perhaps aren't familiar with Dr. Reddy's, can you just tell us a little bit about the business and what it does here locally?
Yes, first of all, thank you to Dr. Vikram and Professor Oberoi. It was very interesting to hear from them both. Hello, everybody. My name's Andy Walker. I'm the site leader at a pharmaceutical manufacturing site in Mirfield, West Yorkshire, near Leeds. I work for Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, which is a leading global pharmaceutical manufacturer. We're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And if you really had to encapsulate the company, it would be our vision and our mission, which is good health, can't wait. And if you broke that down, it's that good health is our goal. It's about providing access to medicines to help patients regain their health. We see medicines as not just molecules, but as a means to help patients, and that's really our focus. So that's the good health bit. The can't wait is we feel we have a commitment to really act with speed to accelerate medicines across the world, and we've got a global footprint with a global supply chain, and that's what we do as an organisation. That really is our mission in a nutshell. In terms of the site in West Yorkshire, the site's been here for many years. It started off from a spin-off from the coal industry, believe it or not, and we moved into agrochemicals. And in the recent past, we've developed into pharmaceutical operations. And on the site in Mirfield, we're now a fully pharmaceutical manufacturing site. We supply medicines across the globe. We supply internal medicines to the Dr. Reddy's group for further processing, and we also provide medicines to external customers. We manufacture the front end of the process, which is we call it active pharmaceutical ingredient. It's known as the API, and it's the business end of the drug, if you like. We then send that drug out, and where it's formulated into a cream or a tablet or a capsule, and then it can be taken by the patient. So we do the front end. As a site, we're a 24/7 site operation. It's a relatively small site of about, we hover around 85 to 95 employees, but we really do have a real mix of talent within the site and within the organisation. We have, you know, all the range you'd expect from a manufacturing site, from PhD chemists to engineers, talented operations staff.
No, absolutely. And you know, as an Indian-owned business, you know, what's the relationship like with you know, your Indian HQ, and how does the collaboration work between the two?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I guess, like most people, I'm gonna answer this with a pre-COVID answer and a post-COVID answer. Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, as a business, we have a good relationship with HQ. We have, I mean, prior to the COVID, we had lots of visits both ways from senior stakeholders in India, but also from staff out here, and that's something that the corporation is really keen on. Developing, you know, to really sort of set the culture in. I mean, I can speak for myself. When I joined the business, it was important for me to go out and meet my stakeholders and really try and get a feel for the culture of the organisation. There's lots of secondments. We have lots of secondments currently from India, based in the UK, and that's quite nice. They get, you know, there's nice sort of cross-fertilisation between different cultures. Lots of corporate initiatives that we have. So. We had a Young Achiever Award, so there's a graduate chemical engineer that works at Mirfield. She actually won an award as a Young Achiever for some work that she'd done, which was recognised within the organisation. She then got invited to a celebrations event, which it's hard to imagine now, but it was almost like a festival. You know, there's people all kind of celebrating the success together, and she was you know, she was invited. And then there's the usual sort of things, I guess, that you'd expect from a corporate organisation. There's all the IT systems, the quality management systems, the safety management systems that we sort of share knowledge and work together on. So yeah, it's a strong relationship we have.
Great. And just very briefly, you know, what's next for Dr. Reddy's in Yorkshire?
Well, I mean, essentially, that's my job. It's to grow the business. It's to grow the business in a nutshell. And that's by growing internally, in internal business that we have, growing externally in terms of external business. That's really important for us. And it's by expanding capability in terms of capacity, but also capability in terms of people and plant. And, you know, people are the important thing. And that's one of the things that we're really going to try and do. And that's really important for growth for the business moving forward.
No, absolutely. Well. Good luck with your plans for that. I think we're all are going to need a little bit of luck in the next few months. But thank you very much for joining us today, Andrew.
Thanks.
Okay, our next guest is Satty Saha, who's the regional president of TransUnion. Satty originally worked for TransUnion Sybil in India as the chief business officer before coming over to the UK in 2018. Not long after TransUnion had acquired the coal credit business, which many of you will be very familiar with, and then has led the business for the last couple of years. Welcome, Satty. What learnings do you think can be applied from your experience of doing business in India to delivering success here in Leeds and the UK?
Hi, Alex, and thank you to you and Dr. Vikram for having me here, and a very good afternoon to all your viewers. So I think moving into the UK from India, in some respects, the financial services industry is quite similar, right? And what we do as a service for the banks is we kind of help them lend to consumers in a safe and compliant way. And for me, the business part was the easy bit. The thing I had to learn was the cultural differences, right? So like Dr. Vikram, I'm an Indian working here in the UK for an American company. So for me, it was coming together 3 different cultures, and how do you navigate through that was perhaps the most interesting learning. And Indians, we are quite expressive. Some may even call us loud. We are excitable as people, and we love to nod and wave our hands as we speak. So it took some adjustments for me to get used to what I would call as the equanimity, or perhaps the stoicness of the boardroom, and the subtlety of the humor. In India, if you went to a client meeting and someone said, "Yeah, that's interesting," you knew that they had liked it. But here, interesting might mean you just wasted half an hour of my time. So I think the cultural aspect of it, and making sure that you pick up the nuances of it was perhaps the biggest learning. I wish there was a manual for it, but you pick it up as you go along.
Well,
but I think
as a Lancastrian, I'd like a manual for working in Yorkshire.
Oh, absolutely, in the actual, right? But I think in the financial services space and in the data and technology space, there are lots of opportunities for cross collaborations between the 2 economies. And I think there are lots of areas that we can both learn from each other, and we have been kind of sharing our best practices with our Indian colleagues and vice versa.
Yeah. Perhaps, Satty, if you could tell us a little bit more about how you do share those ideas and how that helps to strengthen links between the 2 countries.
Yeah, I think one of the big things in India, and Professor Oberoi kind of alluded to it, even Dr. Vikram mentioned it, is as the economy grows, there's a big thrust for financial inclusion, right? Where there's lending that is required for a population that may not necessarily have taken loans before, so they don't have credit footprint. And one of the things that we are doing here very well in the UK, which is perhaps a global first, is the concept of open banking, right? Where you can start using the bank information or the banking information for dispersal of credit. And that's an idea that's gaining grounds in India. The central bank in India has been working in terms of introducing infrastructure which will allow for that. And we are actively working with Sybil, our sister company there, to kind of create that industry first along with the central bank there in India. So there's a great export of IP from here in the UK to India. And equally, we employ about 1,000 odd people here in Leeds, but in India, in Chennai, we run a big global delivery center, and we have over 3,000 people, and some of those people actually work for our business here in Leeds. So a lot of the things that we are introducing or launching or developing here in the UK actually gets manufactured in India. So there's a lot of cross collaboration and exchange of both IP and people across the 2 businesses.
That's great. And just to finish off, Satty, what would you say is your favourite bit about being in Leeds, as someone who's been here a couple of years now?
Oh, so it's going back to my excitable roots. So we have managed to become one of the sponsors for Leeds United. So going for the Leeds United games, pre-COVID was a definite part of the excitement, and last season was just amazing, right? As they won the championship. So yeah, absolutely loving it here.
Well, fingers crossed you'll be able to see them in a Premier League game in the not too distant future. But thank you very much for joining us, Satty. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to bring forward Jason Walsh, who's the Chief Executive at CPP. Now, CPP is a fascinating business case study, I think, in terms of how it's pivoted from a UK-focused business to a genuinely international business, and India's central to that strategy and success. So, Jason, perhaps you could talk us through how that has been so successful for your business.
Yes, certainly. Thanks, Alex, and thanks for inviting me to join this webinar. And it's been really fascinating to hear all the speakers so far. So thank you enormously, everybody. if I can take you back, so we're a business that's been operating since the early 1980s, so for around 40 years. We work primarily through financial services partners and provide them with secondary or ancillary products and services such as card and wallet insurance, mobile phone insurance, extended warranty, and various travel, health and lifestyle products and services. We work with card issuers, finance providers, and mainstream insurance businesses as our predominant partner base. So for the first 25 years of our existence, we operated in the UK initially and then expanded out into Europe, and then more recently into Mexico, China, Turkey, and India. And until very recently, all our growth in each of these new markets has been organic and based on our initial UK model. We hire good people with a great knowledge of their local markets, give them lots of support from the centre, and we reward them well. So if I can paint a picture of, in 2012, as you say, we've historically been a UK focused and UK centric organisation for the majority of our history. But in 2012, around 75% of our group revenue and profit came from our UK market, and about 80% of our customer base was also based in the UK. Now, if you take this year, exactly the same figures are true of our Indian operation. So in 2020, the vast majority of our group revenue, our profits at the EBITDA level, and our customer base is from our Indian market. We have a great Indian chief executive who knows his market extremely well. He has a Barclays and GE financial services background, and he's been with CPP for around 11 or 12 years, firstly as a head of sales, and then for the last 9 years as the chief executive. He has a great network and a great leadership team around him, and he's absolutely focused on rewarding, and is rewarded rather, for creating value for our group. But I guess over the last 4 years or so since I've been in this role, we've moved to a more decentralized structure as an organization. We've reduced the cost base and the size of our head office operation and invested in our overseas markets and our overseas resources. And that's been particularly relevant in India, where we built a self-sufficient team. We've made a majority investment stake in a business process outsourcing operation in India, and we're building our own bespoke IT system for the Indian business. So we're no longer relying on group and central resources for that. In terms of the reasons for the success, in my opinion, it's been all about hiring the right people, rewarding them well, establishing great partner relationships which give us market access, offering products and services which are absolutely relevant for the expanding so-called middle classes in India. I guess the explosion in smartphone usage, as well as an insatiable appetite for consumer durables, has really expanded and fueled our growth over the last 3 or 4 years.
Absolutely, and you know, it's a fantastic success story. What would you say that you or CPP have learned as you've grown in India?
Yeah, there's been a few lessons learned along the way. I think I've already mentioned the quality of the leadership and the reward for that leadership and the freedom to operate within a framework. So it's a mixture of independence, but with support from the centre. So that's a really important lesson. You also need a lot of patience. I'll be honest about that. We set up in India in 2007 or 8. With an organic growth plan, as I've said, and we only broke even at the EBITDA level after 8 years of operation in 2016. This year we'll achieve almost 100 million of revenue, and despite COVID hitting us quite badly in April and May of this year, we've recovered extremely well and we'll make around 7 or 8 million pounds EBITDA this year. But you need patience, it doesn't happen overnight. We've also benefited from reductions in corporation tax recently, and as well as lower taxes on repatriating funds from India. I think another important learning is, from my perspective anyway, you need to press the flesh in India. You know, you can't stay in Leeds or stay in the UK and expect to grow and run a successful Indian organisation, no matter, you know, how strong your local team is there. I make about 5 or 6 trips per year to India. In fact, I was last there in March and was on one of the last flights out pre-lockdown. But I go about 5 or 6 times a year, meeting partners, service providers, our team. And I think that's a really essential part of it, an important lesson we've learned. I think you need to immerse yourself in the culture of India. So as Satrajit said, but in reverse, you know, I think it's my job to immerse myself in the culture in India, whether that be going on a rickshaw around the old town of Delhi, whether that be going on a sunrise tour of Kolkata, whether that be the sights and the sounds and the smells of Varanasi, wherever it might be. You need to be in the culture and in the marketplace. And I think, you know, lastly, in terms of lessons learned, you really need to find the right balance between control of assurance and financial frameworks and allowing entrepreneurship locally. You know, too much of the former and you'll stifle innovation and growth, and too little will increase your risk of the business running away from you. And as a UK listed PLC, we can't afford for that to happen.
No, absolutely. Well, as I said to Dr. Vikram earlier, it's important that we've got these success stories that people can look up to and follow in the footsteps. And you know, CPP is certainly one of those for our city region and the relationship with India. So, you know, congratulations on what you're achieving there, and good luck with it in the future.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
So we've just heard from 3 great businesses operating in the city region. I'd like to now bring in Hannah Kendrick, who's the head of corporate and a partner at the international law firm Squire, Patton, Boggs. Hi, Hannah. For those businesses who are feeling inspired by what they've heard, what are some of the practicalities of starting up in India?
Thanks. And thanks very much. It's been really interesting hearing from the businesses and Professor Oberoi and Dr. Vikram and their insights. So that's great. I suppose Squire, Patton, Boggs is obviously a global law firm. So part of what we want to do is to help businesses start those collaborations and strengthen the links and develop the new partnerships that we've heard so much about. I think from a legal perspective, if we take a step back, the practicalities really start with thinking about solid foundations. I think that's probably the message for people to take away here. It is, India, from a legal point of view, is a large and complex jurisdiction, but on the positive side, it's very much familiar concepts. It's the legal system's obviously largely established from the British one, and as we heard from Professor Oberoi, where it sits on that sort of scale and those rankings of ease of doing business is it's getting higher up all the time. So there's a real effort there, and we're seeing that reflected in sort of legal steps. But there can be some sort of practical points and sort of points for the unfamiliar to be aware of and for people to be wary of. But all of those can be avoided with a bit of sensible planning and obviously good advice. I think practically, if you're thinking about sort of new operations or new initiatives into India, we would sort of advise a couple of things. Firstly, know the regulatory regime in which you're going to be starting to operate, and recognise that, as we've said, things are moving. So these things are constantly evolving. The framework in which you're operating in is evolving. So just have that in mind when you're perhaps interpreting some of the regulation that you're looking at. Evaluate carefully anybody that you're thinking of doing business with in terms of whether it's a joint venture partner or a target. That's something that's going to apply whatever jurisdiction. So, but it's up there on the list. And I think, and I would say this, but good, thorough legal documents at a very early stage that build in those protections that are going to pay dividends in the future is really important. And I think that it's kind of almost having one wary eye on what an exit strategy might be. I would always say it is good when you're planning your entry strategy, because as we had sort of Jason talk about, getting cash, getting proceeds out of India. It's making sure that you've got all of those steps in place and you understand how that's going to work. And I think worth noting, one of the protections you should always think about from a practical point of view in terms of dealing with India is sort of how disputes might get resolved. And obviously, interested in anybody else's view on the call, but the Indian courts have a sort of a reputation of quite lengthy, complex processes. So always be wary about how you're going to sort disputes out, and build into your documents whether it needs to be arbitration proceedings or otherwise. In terms of those, practical first footfall, again, we heard Dr. Vikram talk about sort of the way that sort of foreign direct investment is now being more and more encouraged and growing. Those first footfalls can be the usual routes of a new limited company, whether you enter into a sort of a joint venture arrangement, perhaps that sort of branch or liaison office for the first ability to do business through your existing company. That traditional route of setting up a company, again, things are becoming easier. It's not too onerous. It can be a little bit time consuming, but it's really something that can be achieved. You have to think about whether you're meeting the regulatory requirements of number of shareholders, and you do need an Indian resident director, but none of those are real sort of barriers to entry that we're seeing. So I think, practically plan ahead to avoid any sort of nasties in terms of disputes. Do your due diligence in the way you would in any jurisdictions, but let's have a little focus on sort of the governance and regulatory regime. One thing practically we do see in India is quite complex existing corporate structures and individual cross-shareholding. So understand the party that you are starting to do business with. And then, again, picking up on Professor Oberoi's point that the sort of the number of people employed in India of by UK businesses, again, huge numbers. So get that right, get your employment structure right, whether it's how you're sending somebody across to make those first steps into the market, or whether you're starting to employ locally. It's all it's all a case of making sure you're following the appropriate local, and some of them are state employment processes and sort of regulations. So lots to think about. Bit of planning can sort of create those solid foundations. So the right advisors and knowing the sort of regulation framework that you're looking at is sort of the top tips.
No, absolutely, and all very interesting points. And for those of you who weren't able to scroll them down fast enough, it's a reminder to me that this webinar will be put on at the Business Desk YouTube channel over the next couple of days, so you can watch it back at your leisure. And we will be having a write-up on the Business Desk early next week as well. But Hannah, thank you very much for bringing your perspective to the discussion.
Thanks, Alex.
And then finally, I'd like to bring in Roger Marsh, who's the chair of Leeds City Region, LEP and NP11 among his other hats. So Roger, we've heard some great stuff around the business relationships between Leeds City Region and India. Why is it important to the City Region and the UK more widely to have that strong relationship?
Thank you, Alex, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to try not to repeat what other people have said, because it's self-evident from the enthusiasm as well as the diversity of the current investments as exemplified by the businesses we've heard from, and particularly delighted to hear from the Consul General. It is important that we build on what we've already got. It's not as though we're starting from scratch, as evidenced in the conversation. And it's important that we think about our role as part of the UK's broader relationship with India. We think about what we can build on from our current economic and sectoral strengths, whether it be within health tech, technologies, devices and data, whether it be in financial professional services, as we've just seen exemplified, or manufacturing more broadly, or more recently, the creative and digital space. And I think there's a lot where that business to business, as well as the opportunities both ways, because I'm very clear, it's all about a two-way street, not a one-way street. And to Jason's point, absolutely, in my own work with China and other places, there's nothing better than getting out there and actually seeing people and talking to them and building those trusted relationships as between people. I think it's something, I think the Prime Minister Modi calls the living bridge or something of that order, and I hope I haven't misquoted him. So I think it's very important that we continue that. And indeed, not this for me to advertise one of your events early next year, but I think the Invest North event, which will have to be virtual for all of the reasons, is an opportunity to use the wonders of modern technology to at least start the digital flesh to pressing the flesh to flesh. So I think that is important that we do that. But I think we have to also be clear, we can't do everything. We can't go everywhere. We can't satisfy everybody. So it's important that our approach is where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I'm even more enthused by what we could and should be and will be doing with India, having been participant in the Northern Powerlist a few weeks ago. I realised what a huge opportunity, and particularly when you reflect in UK terms, the Asian community represents 4% of our population, but add 10% to our economy. That sounds like a good deal for the UK, and we need to recognise that good deals deserve good deals.
No, absolutely, and things like that and the success stories will only become more prominent with the Issa brothers taking over as to one of the gems of the city region. We've had a couple of questions in during the webinar from business owners who I suppose would like more information about getting involved around grants and support. What role does the LEP play, and how can businesses work with organisations like the LEP to start to navigate the path through?
I guess the LEP plays really three roles. One is the convening role, the joining, the gluing, the lubricating, as between somebody saying, well, we want to come to this part of the world, but we don't know anybody. Well, you've got a name and a face on this on this webinar, and other colleagues would be those front doors. I think secondly, going out and building on the relationships that may exist already, that may be civic and cultural, but not necessarily economic. And I reference, as I mentioned earlier, some of the work I've personally been involved with our sister city relationships around other parts of the world, and we should be developing that in the Indian subcontinent, where there's a reason for it, there's a relevance for it economically. When it comes to investment, so that's something where we do trade missions, we do visits, but we're trying to increasingly do these at an organ level rather than just at a local level, because actually there's more value to that, and you get obviously higher up the organisations in India and other countries. The third part is where those businesses, and I'm talking to one at the moment, think that our part of the world is a good place for them to either further grow, like Dr. Reddy's, or alternatively wish to come and make themselves, make available all the huge talent we have. We've got 9 universities, lots of Indian students in them, but actually opportunities for people to come and invest in the city region and use that talent base, as indeed Channel 4 discovered when thinking about where they might move their national headquarters. Other places west of us and southwest of us were attractive, but nowhere near as attractive as Leeds and the city region. And we have obviously some funding available, and we look to try and support businesses where we can. But support isn't all about money. Support about is making it easy to do business, how to navigate through the various routes so that pathway is simple and as easy as we can make it, albeit also have to be very honest and clear about that it's not just at the wave of a wand. These things are hard fought for, but actually the prize is always worth that effort. So the LEP's role is, as I said, quite simply to provide that conjoining, that gluing where appropriate between parties, but also where it is helpful to enable things to happen and to things to accelerate rather than perhaps get stuck.
Yeah, and I was talking to Mark Arthur, the Chief Executive of Yorkshire Cricket, earlier this morning, and he's very excited about India's return to Headingley next year after 19 years, and hopefully in front of a capacity crowd as well. But what are you excited about in terms of the Leeds City region and India relationship?
as a city region which is actually in economic terms second only to London, the southeast, we have a big part to play, particularly post-COVID, in helping the UK, not just the North, the UK recover, but also recovery is actually multifaceted in my mind. There's the rescue of the here and now and the support of the businesses we've got, but it's also the reimagining. What are the opportunities that this presents that perhaps we wouldn't have thought about? And that's one of the exciting bits for me in my role, as to how we reimagine our relationships beyond, but not excluding Europe, but beyond Europe, in a way that we probably have been a little bit slow at as a country. That said, to enable us to do what we want to do, we need much more control over the resources locally, so that we can be in charge of our own destiny. And the work of people like Sharon Jandu and others really helps. And these sorts of dialogues and connections with Professor Roopinder, etc., fill me full of optimism, but also realism that this is a long game. But actually, when we look back in 20 years' time to mark how far we might have come from where we currently are, which is probably a lot stronger than I even appreciated, and fascinated, and really grateful for the company's comments during this webinar.
Absolutely. Well, also appreciate your comments as always, Roger. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
That's nearly all we've got time for. Our hour is nearly up. I would just like to welcome back the Consul General of India, Dr. Vikram, just for his closing thoughts, if I may. There's been an awful lot to reflect on, I think, in terms of what we've heard from the Consul General originally, and Professor Oberoi, and then to get the UK and Leeds perspectives from Jason Walsh, Satty, Saha, and Andrew Walker, as well as Hannah and Roger. So Dr. Vikram, what are your reflections on what you've heard over the last hour?
Well, thank you, Alex. First of all, I must say that, it was a very informative discussion. And actually for me also, I don't think we can have a better ambassador or representative than Jason himself, who, he put forward his experience in India and how that was made into a success story. There are always, whenever any one of us enters to a territory which is not our home, we need to adjust. And as I think Satrajit also mentioned that, there are cultural issues, there are legal as well as administrative issues which come up. And but it is only when we have faith in each other's economy, when we have the faith in each other's strength. So if you take an informed decision of entering into a market, then there are very few markets in the world like India today, which is not only a huge market in itself, but it is also a huge talent pool. It is also it is one of the unique places, where both demand and supply can be there itself. So, and as in this COVID-19 scenario, when word is a place which has now finally realized that we are much more closely connected than we actually have imagined before. And also, we are entering into an era where there might be an adjustment of global supply chains. So India there itself projects and is present there. When, I think when Professor Oberoi, I will thank her for her remarks also, when she was, I think, mentioning about Honorable Prime Minister's project of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is self-reliant India. Necessarily, that basically means building on the strengths of India. Building on the strengths of India to project it on a global stage, to take advantage. And that is what I was suggesting for a city region or for a region like Leeds. It is important for us to recognize and understand what are the things which will have a market in India and vice versa. What are the complementarities between the two regions? And one of the things I will say is, India is a very big country. And I agree with what Roger said about, building upon the strengths which we already have. And a regional approach in this regard is very helpful, because there would be like in India, if you see Gujarat is very different for what UP is, or what Tamil Nadu is, or what might be Bengal is. So if we are able to identify a particular region, then when we talk about sister city collaborations, or when we talk about the regional cooperation between the two governments, sometimes decision at the regional and the local level, when we look at from the point of view of a regional association, once you develop that relationship, the movement is much faster. So if we have if that is something which, a regional approach is something in which, Roger or other authorities in Leeds would be interested, I think it would be a good idea to identify a region in India. It could be sector-based also, which is also there. But if it is region-based, it will always put you directly in touch with those in the other side who also have similar ideas about Leeds, and people can be introduced. And I think he also mentioned about an event which is, I think, Invest in North event. So I mean, if there is anything which we could be of help in putting people together, or connecting people back home in India, so I mean, please do tell us, and we would like to help. And as I said in the beginning, the consulate is here, and our numbers and our emails are all available. So if there is anything which we could be of help, then please do approach us, and we would like to strengthen this relationship between India and UK further, and especially with the Leeds region and India.
Absolutely. Well, we will definitely take you up on that offer for the Invest North conference, which runs next March, on March the 24th, which we launched this week. But and I'm sure many people on the call will look to get in touch at the appropriate moment for your help and assistance. So thank you very much, Dr. Vikram, for that, and for joining us this afternoon, and for your contribution.
Thank
you. That's pretty much all we've got time for, I'm afraid. Just a few thank yous to Sharon Jandu in the Northern Asian Powerlist, and Squire, Patton, Boggs for their support in putting on this afternoon's events. To all of our speakers for their contributions, and especially to the Consul General, Dr. Vikram. I hope you've found it both informative and inspiring, and I hope it's sparked some ideas as to what you and your business might be able to do in the future. But thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.